Hey Tigresses and Tigers, this is part 2 of how we can handle fear in another way when we are really deeply triggered. Like, for example, I feel threatened by war, or I feel threatened by I will have to leave my hometown. So something like that really shakes up in the ground and makes us feel basically unsafe. How can we meet those fears, or how can we meet those charges of trigger in our nervous system in a way that is healthy, in a way that is embodied and present, in a way that is eventually about empowerment instead of weakening ourselves? I'm talking about this a lot, and I'm doing research about this a lot, and I teach about this a lot because our culture teaches 24/7 quite the opposite. So our whole outer system, many layers of our capitalistic structure in society is based on us feeling dependent on others, making sure that we are safe. So what we lose in this process of cultural conditioning is our innate access to our instincts that say, hey baby, if you want to feel safe, you have to listen to me. You have to live in alignment with me. Just because we have everything inside in order to feel in an inexplicable way safe, no matter what, because we can tap into our biological and mystical instincts in a way where we are deeply embodying ourselves and at the same time almost transcending. It's through incarnating more, we transcend more from a very concrete situation, and we rediscover a layer of unshakable safety or unshakable sense for existence and orientation within ourselves, which grows even more the more there's turmoil and trauma and chaos around going on. So this is another baby step that all of us are doing, because basically, let's face it, we are students on this path. So it's not about, yay, I made it and I feel constantly safe, but it's about, yay, I make it every day a little bit better, listening to my life and to my life's next teachings when it comes to tapping back into my body, into my embodiment wisdom, and tapping back into my mystical instincts, which is something that we normally do not associate with embodiment. However, this is therefore even stronger in what I'm exploring and what I'm sharing. So the first part is what I published the episode before, and you're welcome to listen to that if you missed it. And now the second trick is how to handle fear in a different way, is microdosing the fear. What I mean by that is what we learn in our culture and what is then very quickly our comfort zone is neglecting the fear, blaming others, you make me feel unsafe, and trying to not breathe until the situation changed. Problem number 1, the moment we stop breathing is the moment that we make it more likely that the situation doesn't change. And if it changes at all, it might not change in a way that is good for us, or that really provides more orientation or aliveness or happiness for us. So keeping breathing is one basic trick when it comes to embodiment, no matter what. And then let's unlearn the cultural conditioning of suppressing the fear and hoping that somebody else will make it go away. And then the next, or the moment we recover from this cultural pattern of constant avoidance, we might fall into the other extreme, which is maybe even more shocking and even less digestible for our system. And that is, we take an overdose. We are all too eager and say, hey, okay, I am facing my fear of death. And we are running towards it. And then it's like, yeah, I run a marathon and I never tried jogging. I do not even have appropriate shoes, for example. So do not do this mistake But it's kind of a kindergarten mistake that I think all of us are doing, because or many of us might be able to relate to, just because we have a kind of kindergarten culture when it comes to truly handling our own fears in an empowering and mature way. So let's figure out how that is possible. And microdosing is a very important thing. Because let me give you an example of, for example, I might be afraid of a nuclear war happening and affecting my own well-being and maybe leading to my own death. So it's a deep trigger. And at the same time, I might say, okay, it's not that irrational at the moment. At the moment, it isn't happening as a fact. It can potentially happen, but it was also before those weeks when a concrete war was in my continent, there has also been this risk of a nuclear war. So I am dealing with this fear like as a basic principle on the path of energy instead of the path of words. So never ever try to convince yourself that you have no reason for being afraid, because your nervous system, it might use an irrational trigger for feeling afraid, but the underlying charge that is coming up in you, for example, being afraid of a nuclear war, or being afraid of monsters at night, or being afraid of spiders, whatever, the underlying charge is real for sure. Your nervous system in that way never makes up a fear. Something like a made-up fear doesn't exist. It only exists if you are stuck in your head instead of embodied. In an embodiment sense, there is no such thing like an unnecessary fear. There's just something where your mind knows, okay, it doesn't make sense on the rational level or compared to what is really dangerous at the moment. But the underlying charge wants to move in your nervous system and should be allowed to move in your nervous system for sure, no matter what. So then you are going, for example, to a microdosing process with your fear of nuclear war. And that is that you expose yourself to this fear in really, really baby steps. It's opening your eyes, it's standing there, just shaking a little bit, looking around, and just getting right in this moment. There is no nuclear bomb falling right now. I can realize that. I can open my eyes and I can look around. There is zero bomb falling, like at the moment, as far as I can see. So that is the basic thing, that I microdose, I do a reality check right now. That's the smallest microdosing step that you can do. It is you standing there. Is the monster attacking me right now? No, I think not. Because if I open my eyes, I do not see a monster. I do not hear a monster. I do not smell a monster. I think there is no monster coming my way this moment. And this is the very first thing of microdosing, combining the very present reality, which is just so sober and boring from time to time, with something that makes you feel afraid. And then another step in this microdosing process, after a few times that you did this very first step, might be that you Google, for example, what happens when a nuclear bomb gets down on your city. Because I, for example, did that, and I was very surprised because there were so many information. I do not say they are basically useful, because if a nuclear bomb hits your city, like you might be dead. But that is something that I, in this concrete way, didn't know before. So I had to Google it. And it was also interesting, like finding articles around, hey, and if you survived, you can run. And you should run into this direction and not into another one. And you should make sure that you have these items with you or anything like that. It's not about that the concrete information is concretely useful in the path of words. It is that you are dealing with your nervous system in a basic sense of, like, you are an interviewee for your fear. You are meeting the field of terror. You are meeting the field of fear inside by informing yourselves. And many people do that, and then they do an overdose of overinformation. I'm not talking about overinformation. I'm not talking about too many words at all. I am talking about microdosing. So the whole secret is that you take a sip from something that is related to your fear, and this sip is easy to digest for you. It's not a big deal. It's like you have been sick before. You won't drink 2 liters of, a cold lemonade after you have been sick with your stomach for 2 weeks. You will start with something warm. You will start with something small. You will start with a few sips of something like a warm broth, for example. So treat yourself like that and really be gentle and really do not take an overdose, because an overdose, yes, you can say, oh, I didn't realize that I was reading for too long about nuclear bombs and what I should do when they go down on my city. You can say you have been there for too long in front of the screen and just reading about that. Honestly, if you take an overdose of mind information around nuclear bombs, even though it threatens you, it is because you dissociated from your body in the very first place. So your nervous system will tell you exactly when you sit down in front of the screen, when you want to get up in order to start shaking. So that is the last thing, whatever you did in terms of microdosing, by meeting your fears in the field of words for a little bit of information for your head around interesting. Okay. So then the nuclear bomb, and then I run into this direction, and then I need this, and then, okay, get it. And then you stand up, and that's the most important part. Whatever was triggered through words in your nervous system, it has to move on the path of energy. I'm teaching a lot about the path of energy. You find a lot of free invitation from me, for example, for free shaking events, or even free guidance for you to try out this whole body shaking. I did a very systematic approach and offer it to you in the form of a shaking collection. You will find the link for the shaking collection in the show notes of this episode as well, because this is a very systematic way of how to really deal with all your layers of rage, of anger, of fear, of charge, of anything that wants to move in your nervous system. Because, to some extent, we talk about fear and we talk about fear of death in this episode, but eventually we talk about suppressing life force, and we talk about our potential that all of us have, and our innate longing that all of us have to unlearn suppressing life force altogether. No matter in which frequency it's running through your nervous system, it might be pleasure, it might be fear, it might be love, it might be rage. It wants to move. So how to allow those waves of energy to move in your nervous system? You are very, very welcome to check out the shaking collection. You are very, very welcome in every aspect of my work in order to tap back into an everyday routine experience where your so-called superficial and so-called irrational fears really lead you back into your innate wisdom and instincts, instead of you blaming them or suppressing them because for your mind they do not make sense. So thank you so much for your courage and curiosity, surfing on the way or the path of energy instead of the path of words. I think the path of energy is something that will truly rocket on the individual level and on the collective level, for sure. Bye.